Hi, I'm Julie Plec, and you are listening to In Her Words.
Everyone has a story. Welcome to In Her Words, a podcast from women in entertainment where female creatives and allies share their stories in their own words.
This is a dedicated space centered on how to harness creativity for inspiring and impactful projects in the ever-changing landscape of entertainment.
I'm Renee Rossi,
I'm Gretchen McCourt.
and this is In Her Words. Today, we're talking to Julie Plec. She is an American television producer, writer, and director, best known for her work on the CW television series The Vampire Diaries, including the originals and legacies. She currently was the developer, co-runner, and EP for Amazon's We Were Liars. Today, we talk with Julie about everything fun YA. She's had an amazing history. She watches incredible shows, incredible books, and she's had amazing projects. We hope you enjoy.
Thank you for being here today. It's so nice to meet you. Like we were saying with the We Were Liars group, we had so much fun at the summit with them. And I think it was the day before it was debuting. Is that right, Renee?
Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone was buzzing about it.
We had a very long run up to launch for this thing because we wrapped in September. We were done in post by January, and then still 6 months or 5 months to wait before anybody got to see it. So it was a good long build up.
Yeah, the crowd was buzzing, and we got so many, after the fact comments on social and everything. People were loving it. I know Renee and my daughter have been talking about it. Kendall's like, Renee's been texting me about it, and I haven't watched it.
I live in the YA universe on every level. And it's funny, we were just talking in my office, and we were joking around about, they're like, do any of the other moms watch the YA content? I'm like, no, I just talked to everybody's daughter, and I'm like, in person who's like, I'm in it. I'm like so excited for the summer. It turns pretty this morning. I'm like, let's
You're ready.
let's dive into the YA psyche.
Yeah, that is. Well, that's a great place to start, Julie. How are you in this psyche, in this world, with the other stuff that you've done, with Vampire Diaries and some of your other projects. How did this book and this property come to you?
Oh my gosh. So I've always been a very avid reader. Since I was a kid, I have read, hundreds, if not thousands, probably, of books in my lifetime. And this novel was released in 2014. And I'm pretty sure it was Karina, actually, Mackenzie, who said to me, you got to read this. I think she got an early copy of it. And I have a rule that if a book makes me cry like a baby, it goes straight to my top 10 list. It's a very short list, but the ones that do just got me forever. And this was one of them. And so at the time I just thought, well, somebody will make a movie out of it. It's meant to be a movie. It's got a very clear ending. And that was back when television needed, an engine that could take it for 6, 7, 8 years. And then a decade plus passed. And a couple, failed efforts to get the book for myself. And then finally was able to catch it in a moment where it was coming available again. And then Amazon was really interested in it. And we just were able to kind of do a little matchmaking behind the scenes. And they swooped it up for me. And then I was able to bring Karina in as a, sort of thank you, who, when she gave me the book, was barely an assistant, and now is a full-fledged, creator, showrunner of her own. So it's a nice kismet.
Yeah, no, that is.
It's like you've had such a history, creating cult classics. This is another one on your list.
Let's hope so.
Just kind of stepping back a little bit, let's just talk a little bit. It's obviously you went to school. I don't think you majored in film, if I read that correctly.
I did for a year, and I didn't like it.
You went in as a start, and then you stopped.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So, in terms of how you kind of came to your career and making decisions and then living in this YA universe and making these incredible shows, why don't we start with how you started, and what attracted you to it?
Yeah, I had a really sort of wild, circular, get lost in the woods along the way experience shaping my career. But from the time I was a teenager, I knew I had to be here in, Hollywood, whatever that is now. I just knew I needed to be a part of it in some way. I was Oh, like I said, I did theater, I loved movies and television. I was a child in the John Hughes era, and I was also a child in the slasher horror era of the 80s. And I think when you are so powerfully entertained, oh my God, and let's not even start about Steven Spielberg, right? So
Right,
when
right.
you're so powerfully entertained as a youth, it lights a fire in you. For me, it was a storytelling bug a little bit, but not, I didn't think as a writer, just as like wanting to make movies. And I didn't know what that meant or how I was going to do it, but that was a dream. And
Hmm.
so I chased that dream very like immediately out of college. In spite of having not liked the film major at the time, still never lost my passion for it. And then just started working and found along the way the things that I thought I was good at. Like I really found an ease and a comfort with helping other writers break story or edit their scripts or even lend a hand at times when they were behind writing a little scene here and there so I could put it in front of them and say, here you go, like let me take some of this burden off of you. And I guess over time I just did that often enough and successfully enough that I was able to sort of step into that role myself as a writer with, all the insecurity and the frog complex and the terror in the world. But I loved TV so much. And in TV, if you're going to really make it, you kind of have to be a writer. We are the bosses of the business and I like to be the boss. So I had to kind of like dive in head first and see if I could do it. And it just went well. And I still am terrified by it, but it went well. And I'm a hard worker in general. I'm from the Midwest, that's how we roll in, Chicago and the suburbs. And so I just kind of just did it. And a lot of things happen along the way, like ups and downs, highs and lows, stumbles and surges. But generally speaking, like it's been a pretty good run so far.
That's a great story. Um, we you mentioned being I'm a child of the 80s also, and it's funny, I was just talking about somebody about seeing Jurassic Park in the theaters, and and I am just a sucker for the big summer popcorn. I don't
Oh my
care what
God.
anyone thinks of it, air conditioned movie theater. But what how do you feel about writing and producing and being involved with streaming series versus theatrical versus television that you mentioned? There's just so many different platforms and so many different mediums. So kind of as you were thinking about what you would be in your career and what actually is happening, how what do you like, not like? How's that
Oh
changed what
man.
you're doing?
I mean, it's funny because my birthday is always right around Memorial Day weekend. It's May 26th. And so every year growing up on my birthday, there was either a new like Raiders or a
Yeah.
new Star
Yeah.
Wars or, the big tentpole movies. And so I've
Mm-hmm.
always loved those so much. And rom-coms and weepy dramas, like terms of endearment.
You right?
And I always thought, if I could do anything, I would do those kind of movies, just like big populist entertainment, but like really, really emotional
Mm-hmm.
stories.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stepped into sort of my career at a time when movies were kind of struggling a bit.
Oh.
I think the indie movie market was really flourishing, but that
Mm-hmm.
is not me. I have a deep appreciation for it, but I
It
am
was the big
just not
Miramax era and all
cool
of that.
enough.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm not cool enough or hip enough on any level to even begin to think I could like play in that sandbox. So, and then all of a sudden it was like the end of the 90s and television had what I'll call its first renaissance in sort of
Mm-hmm.
my lifetime, which was David Kelly doing Ally McBeal in The Practice. It was The West Wing. It was 24. Broadcast television was so extraordinary, not to mention the sort of slow and steady presence and rise of HBO. And so I was like, well, shoot, Buffy and Angel. I want to be Dawson's Creek. I want to be in this
I
world,
was I was going to ask, since you worked with
Yeah.
Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
was working with Kevin too at the time, so I got to have like a front row seat to it. I worked on the second season of Dawson's Creek sort of unofficially, and it just was like, wow, here is big, beautiful, bold storytelling. It's exciting. It's propulsive. It's emotional. People die. The stakes are high. Or in the case of YA, the emotional stakes are so high. Like, this is as good as any like Spielberg movie that I ever saw growing up. Right. And so that's what like piqued my interest. And then it took me a while because, like I mentioned, highs and lows, ups and downs and hills and valleys. But, by the time I stepped back into like that desire to write for television and be in television was like the second wave of incredible awesomeness, which was 2005. That was Lost,
Oh,
Grays.
right.
I mean, my God, what else? They all came out at the same
I was
time.
gonna say, you were
Desperate
mentioning
Housewives.
such great television. I was like,
I know,
we
I know. And
forget.
it
All the
was
this is
so
like golden age of
great.
linear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, so that's what got me in, right? Is like you can do anything on television, but I was a broadcast baby, and a lot of the things that like make broadcast so difficult is this need to be able to prove that you can make a show last 100 episodes. And then thank God, Vampire Diaries kind of fell into my life, and Kevin and I did that. And then that took me 13 years to complete, between the 8 seasons of Vampire, 5 seasons of the originals, 4 seasons of Legacies, all kind of happening at once, in addition to other things I was doing at the time. And I woke up, and on the other side of that, the streaming boom had happened. And that was actually really bittersweet for me, because I had been waiting my whole storytelling life to be able to tell those, like adapt all those books I read. Like I remember when Firefly Lane got made into a show, I was like,
Oh, yeah.
oh man, I could have done that, or like 13 Reasons Why. I read
Yeah,
that book.
yeah.
I love that book. But I was like, no one will make this. This is 13 episodes. There's not a series here.
Mhm.
And all of that happened while I was working, and so I had to kind of step into it on the B side a little late and play catch up, which was kind of a bummer, because I still am trying to play catch up. I'm still like, thank you, Amazon, right, for Liars. Thank you, to other places that have developed with me. But like, it was this great, beautiful revolution of storytelling that I had to almost barely witness as a fan in the tiny pockets of time I had to watch TV during that whole era. And so yeah, here I am. Now I'm like, okay, let's do this. Now everyone's doing it, right? Well, maybe I'll have to like step into the new thing, whatever the new thing is going to be. Maybe I can be a pioneer of one of those things if I'm lucky.
When you first have a project, whether it's your own, something you're writing and creating, or like you said, the book, do you now have an immediate idea that it is a streaming series, or it is a theatrical film, or it is television? Do you know right from like that initial idea or initial introduction to it where you think it fits best, or does it evolve?
I have tried over the last few years to develop broadcasts for NBC, both as a writer and as a producer. And I feel like the new broadcast model, with some very small exceptions where they do like big event stuff, is a very difficult structural and story nut for me to crack, because it is so heavily procedural, and my brain is so heavily not procedural. I think in moments. I think in serialized soap opera, and I don't really have that math brain to like shape the investigation, or the sequence of events that needs to like sort of fill out a traditional episode of television, as much as I would like to be honest. And I'm going to keep trying. I have a lot of writers who I know and like who are very good at that, and so we keep taking stabs at that. It's just it's a difficult box to play in right now, and it's confounding to me. Two things confound me. One is how to get a show, like a procedural, cracked properly for NBC, and the other is how to get a show on Apple. And eventually I will figure those two things out, and then my life will be complete. But generally speaking, I approach everything from the point of view of television, because I have an exclusivity with Universal Television. I'm like, I have to make TV for them, and it would be rude of me to be off like, secretly developing all my, many movie projects that, and on their dime. And so I always try to start, is this a show? Often it's a limited, and limited series are very difficult right now to, I mean, let's face it, the industry right now is a difficult, industry. It's 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 a difficult, indust place to get anything made. It's hard to see. It's hard to watch. It's hard, frankly, to be a part of. I'm lucky that I've got, like things happening. But it's a rough time. And so, when I see something and it's very clearly a limited series, that's when I start to say, okay, well, you've always wanted to be in the movie business. You started in the movie business. You came here to be in the movie business. Maybe this one is a movie. And sometimes I sit and I start to write something and I say, okay, let me see if I can figure out what it is while I'm writing it, just to see. Maybe it is a movie. I don't know. So now I'm starting to transition into that phase where I'm opening up the world of my own brain and how I'm going to tell stories and see, like, maybe there's a great feature in this and I just haven't like turned that muscle onto my brain in so long. And maybe now it's going to challenge myself again in that way. Which is also terrifying, circling back to like the theme of the day, right?
Right.
Julie, when when you're talking about some of these shows, right, you were around for the advent of like the CW, it was kind of a game changer when it came to different types of content. And then, over the years, especially when you're talking about linear, and you had mentioned it before, of going from 100 episode seasons and now you're doing limited series, it's so different in terms of how people are looking at content. Can you just talk a little bit about, the development process, just because our audience is always looking for, those types of insights. So it would be great to just talk about the development process of how that's changed and how people should be looking at it. Because, I would say, like, in the same vein as both of you, we would have a 90, like you'd have a 22 season, 23 season episode, of X show that we would all watch. Right. And now you're looking at 12 episodes of like an Outer Banks or something. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
even like Dawson's Creek, when you look back on it, the story arcs, the narratives, the seasons were still 18 to 22 episodes long. And now, like, do you think that it's possible to even make those types of shows anymore,
Well,
and get to that depth of characterization?
it is, I mean, first and foremost, I wouldn't wish 22 episodes on most people. I did it for a very long time. It was brutal. But boy, oh boy, would I kill for some 18 episode orders as a producer, as as a boss, as someone who employs people, as someone who, as a company, as someone who, as a fan of television myself, like,
Yeah.
I'm in a soapbox constantly every time I sit down with an executive. I'm like, 18 episodes, let's do 2 or 16, even 2 pods of 9 or 2 pods of 8. Let's shoot them consecutively. You can split them into 2 seasons. You could have your show on the air every 6 months. Like, what are we doing here? This is nonsense. It's a business model. And that's the saddest thing, is that, and look, I'm going to talk a little bit out of my ass, forgive the language, just because I don't know what people in the tech suites or the C-suites are really planning and plotting and talking about, and the method to the madness. So I'm just sort of speculating. But to me, the problem is that the new model in this business is either subscribers or Wall Street. Being sort of the definer of success, right? And so Wall Street needs immediate results, and subscribers are an immediate, tangible piece of data. And these streamers continue to need more subscribers, and they need to like not have churn rate, and they need to have high completion rate, and they need to know that your show, not only are people watching it and people finishing it, but that they are signing up for the service to see it, staying signed up for the service to see it, and also bringing new people, and your show is bringing new people, and they want to now come and watch the other shows and stick around for the other shows. And so they're making television in small pockets because they only need small amounts to get you there. And then once they have you, sure, they want to keep you, but they also need to feed you. So then they need more new shows, more small pockets of new shows. So success is measured differently. Like, you can have a runaway hit, like Squid Game, Stranger Things, Jack Ryan, those kind of things, and become part of the marquee like brand of the platform. And yeah, they're going to keep you on the air for 5 and 6 years, and they're going to do what they can with you. But like, otherwise, you have a solid hit in the middle, that doesn't mean you necessarily get to stay. And so that is terrifying again. And and frustrating, I think, because you're just constantly living in a state of you don't really know if you have any stability as a storyteller on these
Man.
platforms or in broadcast. Whereas on the CW, that whole model was about building a library for two studios. Warner Brothers and CBS were paying to essentially build an entire library that they
Right.
could sell internationally, that they could sell to streamers. If they wanted a show to stay on the air, that show stayed on the air, and that was rare, and unique, but really nice for people like me, who were able to make 172 episodes over 8 years of one show. The development process, excuse me, is equally as mercurial, because with the sort of absence of a pilot season, which is, everything happening on schedule, which by the way was ridiculous. And I could,
Yeah.
go off on that for a good 37 minutes. Won't bore you. But, to do it all on that schedule and to be in competition with everybody all at the same time is ridiculous. But there was a sense of a beginning, middle, and an end to the process. There was a cohesive timeline. You understood that if you got hired to write your script in September and you delivered your outline by October and you delivered your script before Christmas, and then in January, then someone was going to tell you if you were going to make a pilot or not. In March, you'd be making the pilot. And then in May, someone was going to tell you if you're going to series. And if you went to series, you were shooting by July. Boom, right? Chaos, horrible, runaway train, absolute nightmare. But it happens.
Yeah.
Now we're like more like the movie business where they're like, oh, thanks for your script. We'll get you notes in a month and a half. Like, oh, we might order you. I have scripts that have been sitting at a broadcast network since one was before the strike.
Oh my gosh.
And one was delivered, maybe a year ago. I don't know. So long ago that I forgot that they were there, but they are still in contention to be made, and it's like, great, I guess. Thank you. Please make them. They're good shows. But wow, it's a very, very different rhythm for sure.
I tried to explain to my kids about like all the shows starting in September, right after Labor Day, and going, and they were looking at me like, what a crazy lady, stop. Like
Yeah.
they could not even wrap their heads around what that meant to like all the new seasons starting at one time and
Yeah.
going for the same time
Oh
and
my
then
God.
ending at the same time. And yeah,
And
it's
back to
just,
school, back to
yeah.
I just
TV, and the
remember
sweeps
August, like
period.
July, August, you were so bummed because
So
you knew you
sad.
had nothing to
Nothing.
watch in July
Yeah.
and August. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
everybody transitioned to the movie business because that's the only place you get fresh new
Yeah.
content. And then
Mhm.
all of a sudden you'd be like, oh my God, like September 11th, Felicity's premiering. Or
Exactly.
like,
Yes,
you know,
it
and it's
was.
fabulous. Yeah.
No, it's just such a crazy, crazy concept to even think about now.
Yeah.
Julie, with your shows that we're talking about, with We Were Liars and with Vampire Diaries, what these shows? So Candace Candace King was on our podcast. Gosh, one of our first guests,
Best.
and so great, so beloved. Oh my God, her fans are just rabid. But what do you think it is about some of these stories and some of these characters? And we're seeing this with, We Were Liars is everywhere. People talking about it, they become, whether you call it iconic, they become just so, just so beloved with, is it, it's the writing, it's the actor, is it the combination that's just like the perfect but what, that people are still talking about Vampire Diaries so much now, and their fan base is still so
New generation.
strong.
They
Yeah,
talk
and
about
a new
I
generation.
remember seeing I remember seeing an interview with like Josh Jackson talking about like how with Dawson's Creek now like it's like the next generation.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
how Vampire Diaries is having that with the next generation, and We Are Liars might have that with the next generation, in 5-10 years, and what that means in terms of like the circuitous nature of the
Mhm.
shows.
Yeah, I've experienced that in real time. Just like every couple years, a new 12-year-old talks to me and is like, I love Vampire Diaries so much. I'm like, you were not born when
Right,
when it
right.
was on. So, and I love to ask them like, well, where are you watching it, and where did you find it? And for many years, of course, it was Netflix, and Netflix really made the show. CW, Mark Pedowitz, Peter Roth, like they physically made the show, and they physically kept it alive and thriving at the level that it was able to on that network. And so they are entirely responsible for the fact that it exists, but Netflix, I think, is entirely responsible for the fact that it is a global, decades now long hit, right? And that is a wild, wild experience to be in a foreign country. I was just in Paris last month, walking across the street by the Eiffel Tower, and two like 17, 18-year-old girls came up and introduced themselves to me on the corner, and they were from I don't know, maybe Australia. I don't know. But like they were like, oh my God, you do the Vampire Diaries. I was like, yes, I do.
Wow.
Wow. So that has been incredible. But as to the why, I don't know, because I think the answer very clearly is all of the above. I have seen shows blow up into massive sensations where the acting was not great, but the people were pretty. I have seen shows where the people were pretty and nobody cared. I have seen shows where the writing was super lame and people were obsessed because maybe the costumes were really cool. Like there is a moment and a reason why people just decide that this is going to work for them, and then it just works. And I'm going to speak for myself as a fan. I had that moment with the OC. I watched the OC and I thought, well, that was a perfect hour of television. That is exactly what I want. That is a world that I've never been a part of. I am riding this wave with a character who is also from outside of that world, although in a much, sort of naughtier and darker way. But I think he's so cute. And all I want is for him to be happy. And oh, here's this like scrappy best friend who's so funny and makes him smile. And the two of them are going to be bros. And here's these two very rich, pretty girls. And one of them's super mean and one of them's super tortured. And like, wow, I love this, And
it's a perfect cocktail.
And I think when you discover something and you love it, and then you find other people who love it too, then you together can love on it so hard that like that's the nucleus of the sort of the hit, it's like one person loves it, the other person loves it, the two of them talk about it, they bring in two more friends, and then it multiplies and multiplies. And so if you apply social media and a global audience to that concept, that is how you get The Summer I Turned Pretty. That is how you get 13 Reasons Why, circling back, is that there's just something potent in the recipe for the show. And in this particular case of the OC, it was cast right. It was written well. It had great music, and it had a really fun world, and it was sexy and a little bit naughty, but still kind of traditional and chaste in its own way. It was relatable. It had everything, and I think Vampire Diaries we lucked out hard, obviously I like to think it was decently written, and we worked very hard to make it look very good, make it look like a movie every week. But it had a young girl at a time in her life when she felt lost, and she had lost her parents, and she was sort of struggling and adrift in the world, and not sure who she was, where she was going to feel her heart fill again and, feel alive again. And then two undead men walk into her life who one
like
is a
happens
really
every day.
good person, although still dangerous because he likes to eat people. And the other is a really bad person with a very, very protected, hidden, wounded soul, And it's like, come on, you do that right, and that nucleus is going to start instantly, and it's going to build. But people don't always do it right. I probably have done it wrong as well. It's. And then one other thing I think that really, a lot of my favorites, if you look at them across the decades, Dawson's, Gilmore Girls, The OC, having done Vampire Diaries. I talked to an executive about this a long time ago. She said there's a timelessness to them, a universality. It's like the towns are aspirational, and you don't rely on cell phones and lingo of the moment. And, it's like you're just living in a timeless space, and people really, I think for the longevity of it can be attributed to that too.
I also think that it's the feeling. I think when you look at, and I think when you look at to All the Boys I Loved Before, Summer I Turned Pretty, Dawson's Creek, when you're looking at the emotions and how that resonates with this young adult audience, while the times have changed, the emotions might not have, in the sense
Mhm.
of you're always
Mhm.
longing for the cute guy, you're longing to be recognized, you're longing to find identity and feel comfortable in your skin, all of those different elements, I think, you know, is something that's almost like timeless searchability.
Yeah, well, the tail wags the dog. Is that the phrase?
Mhm.
The tail wags the dog, in that you as a youth, somewhere got in your mind that it was exciting to be lying like next to someone and have their pinky almost touch yours, right?
Yeah.
Whether that was a biorhythmic response or whether you had read it in a book, you
Interesting.
felt that with all your soul. And then you saw it later on TV and you're like, yes, I know what that feels like. I've been there.
The
And again,
first
whether
kiss
TV gave it to you in the
anticipation,
first place or
Yeah.
not, we'll never
all
know.
of that.
And so then you're in it because you feel like I felt those feelings. I know as an adult, I still know what it feels like to be sitting next to a man at a table and have his leg like pressed up next to mine, whether it's because the table's really small and it's a really crowded group or whether because he kind of likes me. I never know. And that is the beauty, because then I go and I write about it, and I write about it from the point of view of a young woman, and she doesn't know either, and we never know, and so it just keeps feeding itself, and
Mhm.
Yeah.
that's part of the fun of it.
No, but I think
100%.
you're right about the timelessness because I'm thinking about some of the shows you mentioned that obviously I've rewatched that I've watched with my daughter. And never, yeah, the thought of, oh, that's dated doesn't come
Yeah.
into your mind because you're focused on the relationships, you're focused on the emotions, you're focused on, all the things all the writing, really, it is the writing that, that lets those stand the test of time.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's so great. Julie, you mentioned a little bit about, the difference on production and that side. What are your feelings about being able to film not only in California but in the US, and what are those challenges that you're facing as a producer, especially with where and how you want to get these projects made?
It's, I mean, my last two projects were shot in Nova Scotia, Canada,
Mm.
and Spain.
Oh, wow.
Um, I spent 13 years shooting in Atlanta, Georgia prior to that. I've shot in New York. I think the last time I worked in Los Angeles on production was when I was a co-producer on this movie called Cursed that Wes Craven directed back in 2003. And prior to that, I made a TV show with Kevin called Wasteland. Ironically, that was set in New York,
But
but
it
shot in
actually filmed
LA
in
over
LA.
at the Radford lot in 1999.
Mm.
Um, I've been peripherally involved in Stay in LA, which is the sort of little grassroots
Mhm.
revolution, as they say, of filmmakers trying to get the budget cap raised, which they were just successful in doing, which is great. I know that the guilds have really gotten involved in that as
Mhm.
well. Everybody wants to be able to work at home, and also creatively and artistically, this idea that I think it was right after the fires, I went to one of my like showrunner chat groups and I was like, the saddest thing is if we don't get production back to Los Angeles, Hollywood itself is going to be nothing more than like a dusty tourist attraction. The thing that brought us here, the thing that gave us this business and the dream is just going to be like a studio ride. And we've
Mhm.
got to do something about it, right? And the candle, the fuse is already lit by many other people. I was just sort of chiming in, and so this is progress. What's happening with Newsom and the city councils and the state of California? The fear is it's too little, too late, and I hope that it's not. I just wrote a project that was set in Atlanta because I always love shooting in Atlanta. That's where my film family is, and I love working there. Um, and I changed it to be set in LA because the big sort of rally cry was like, let LA play itself.
Mhm.
And, so I was like, screw it. Let's put your money where your mouth is and let's set it something in LA. Now it didn't sell, so we'll have to do it again with another project. Um, but, I have to say, in all fairness, and the reason
Yeah.
why it's also difficult is We Were Liars was set in Martha's Vineyard. And
Mm-hmm.
so we did a budget for Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And without even stepping foot on the actual Martha's Vineyard, probably shooting in Cape Ann. And, they built a budget and it was what it was. And we said, okay, well, now what? And they said, well, you have about 3 million less than that, 2.5 million less than that. So let's go build a budget for Canada. And they built a budget for Nova Scotia, and it was, and I'm not kidding you, $1.3 million an episode less. And so when you're a writer trying to get all your thoughts on the screen, and when you don't want to be limited in how to tell your story visually and with the size of your cast and with the size of your crew, and do you get a drone or not, like that $1.3 million is there's no conversation to be had at that point. So that's the next hurdle we have to get over is yes, okay, great, let's shoot in LA, but now how do we afford to shoot in LA, and how do we afford to stop shipping all of our jobs overseas? My show needed to be set in Spain or England. It had castles in it, like their Vampire Academy. There was no American location I could have shot it in. So I felt perfectly good about taking it overseas. But people are taking shows overseas that are set in America because it's so much cheaper. And that is when you start to really understand the plight of like the socioeconomic collapse of America over the decades with, the age of innovation and technology. Right. You're like, oh, that's why everybody's upset about losing work. Okay, yeah, I get it now.
Well, it's interesting because we were talking on a different podcast, but we were talking to Amy Sherman-Palladino and about just like how she has set, in filming in Paris and filming in New York for Etoile, and then how she got inspired for the set for Gilmore Girls and things along those lines. And she was saying the same thing. She's like, it's just so expensive, and the budgeting it, and shipping your cast and shooting here, it's just it's exorbitant that you need that assistance needs to be there.
Well, I mean, I think shooting in New York right now, and frankly, New Jersey a little bit because, it's not all that different, is about $500,000 a day. Shooting in Atlanta 10, 15 years ago was about $150,000 a day. Probably by now it's closer to 250 or 3 maybe. But I don't even know what it costs to shoot in LA, to be honest. Maybe somewhere in between Atlanta and New York, but those two states have rebates, and ours previously did not, so or had a limited lottery.
Yeah, in New Jersey, it's like I live in New Jersey, but we have so many films and TV shows being filmed there right now, and then you have Netflix opening the huge Fort Monmouth complex, so it's interesting to see.
Yeah, and I've seen the Carolinas obviously had a huge one, and they're trying to come back. But I saw Oklahoma now was trying to, their rates were trying to get to the old Georgia, the old Atlanta rates, just to, attract filmmakers. So hopefully California, does what they need to do, but other states can. So like you said, you're not forced to go to Canada to to do. I mean, Vancouver is more Hollywood than Hollywood.
Yeah, and it always has been that way, mostly because of the dollar. Not only do you get incentives, but also like in the last few years, the dollar has been I don't know if it's weak or strong, but like good for us. And again, it's so difficult to compete. Now, the good news is there are still filmmakers in this business that have power. And, who can just say, screw you, I'm shooting in California, or I'm shooting in the States, or I'm not leaving my kids behind, and they do have power, and people do listen to them. And responsible filmmakers also can sort of say, I really want to be in New York, or I really want to be in LA because the story dictates it, or my lifestyle dictates it. And therefore I have to figure out how to write to that number. In New York, yes, it's a $500,000 a day, but if you're shooting and all you get around you is the scope of Manhattan, then that is equivalent to a $10 million visual effects world build, if you're setting your show on Mars, right? Like, so it's money well spent if that's what you need,
Well, Julie, I know we're almost out of time. This has been such a fun conversation.
I could talk about this stuff all day.
Thank you my gosh, I love
amazing
this.
questions.
What tell us what you're watching or reading or loving. If are you having
What's going to
time right
bring us to
now?
tears?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my
What's
God.
going to be the
Okay,
next one
so
that we
Yes.
can get ahead
What
of?
do we want to read?
it's funny because like my to watch list is so long because I like have been intermittently, traveling so much and not watching TV, but I did manage to get in the last 6 months probably that I loved. And they all got like a lot of them got nominated for Emmys or will next year. Like Paradise, I really
Oh,
enjoyed.
right.
Your Friends and Neighbors, I just absolutely
Yes.
loved. Although, was that not eligible for Emmys or did that not get nominated?
It
Oh,
might. Was it too
scandalous. It must
late?
not be eligible because John Hamm
Yeah.
is way too good in that to not be
Yeah. It
nominated.
might have been too late.
Um, Four Seasons, I loved. Overcompensating. Talk about like the show that comes out of nowhere and just like knocks your socks off and just like is so delightful and wonderful. And and uh and then oh God, there's more. But and then of course Kevin just made The Waterfront. It dropped a day after mine, so I've had fun binging that and supporting that.
Okay, have you guys watched Shrinking? I know I'm so late to the
Yeah.
game here. That is, I mean, such a funny show. I have laughed out loud at Shrinking.
That
Harrison
is on
Ford's
my
funny.
list. That is at the
It's
top.
really,
That
it's
is at the
really
top of my
good.
list, along with the final season of *Handmaid's Tale*, the latest season
Mm.
of *The Bear*. Um, so
I
much.
just watched The Better Sister, which was really good too.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
that's on my
Yes,
list.
I liked
Yeah,
that too.
I'm actually encouraged creatively by TV right now.
Yeah.
We were in a little bit of a slump, I think, creatively. I was sort of like, I don't know, like there's not a whole lot I'm excited about. But this last 6 months and what's upcoming is like really encouraging. So maybe our business will survive just as a result of us like making some good television and we can like ride that into like more volume,
Mm-hmm.
And then on the book side, wow, I've been reading a lot of like really silly things, like good silly, right? Like yummy silly, like Carly Fortune. I just read her,
Yeah, her
like
next one.
Lake Life, and then I've been reading. I'm researching a tennis project, so I've been reading a ton of tennis books and novels and autobiographies. And so, if you haven't read Andre Agassi's Open, his autobiography Open, that is first in
Very
line.
good.
It is
So good.
incredible, absolutely incredible.
It was
Okay, I'm
funny.
gonna
I was
read
stuck
that.
on I was stuck in Chicago for like 2 days last week because of the storms, and I ended up sitting on the plane, and I ended up watching Wimbledon, like
The
the
movie
the
or the
movie.
tournament?
movie Wimbledon. I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
I just
this is
watched
so
that.
cute. I haven't watched this in like a
That was
decade.
great.
It
It's
was
great.
amazing with Paul Bettany.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I saw it a
and
long time
really
ago. That was
charming.
good.
And I read like Carrie Soto's back, and I read
Mm-hmm.
I just read the new Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is about female astronauts in the late 70s, early 80s, and I loved it. I cried my face off. It's very
Oh, that's a good
weepy
one.
in a
A
good way.
crying one.
Good love story. And
I'm gonna push you on what's the YA content.
oh, what is the YA content?
Crush is like rolling her eyes at me.
No,
right?
no. I'll tell Kendall.
I'm waiting for like the next wave of like my favorites. Like Jandy Nelson just had a new one in the last year that was really beautiful, and Rainbow Rowell, and then Emily Lockhart has Family of Liars coming out. I should plug that for sure because that is in my little
Yes, yes.
universe. I need a good YA one. I need a good, like, I love that. One of my favorites, and they went to make the movie and then they turned it into a period piece, which I thought was so weird. But Rebecca Searle wrote that book about Rosaline from the point of view of like present day story,
yes, of Rosalind.
based on Romeo and Juliet, but from the point of view of the girl that I think is Juliet's cousin Rosaline, who Romeo dated first and then dumped because he met the love of his life and everything went tragically. That's a great one if you haven't read that.
I
But I
haven't
need
read
like
that
a
one.
new John Green book. Like what's John Green been doing? He's been
He hasn't
writing a
been-
lot of smart
I was gonna
books.
say he's writing VidCon.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I need another Turtles All the Way Down, or like, obviously Fault in Our Stars is one of my top 5 weeps in life,
Yes.
Yeah, I read the Griffin Sisters, the Jennifer
Oh,
Weiner
yeah, that
book.
was good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been on a little bit of a summer read tear. It's been fun.
It is nice right now, especially if your life makes you busy in the summer, which it sounds like all three of
Yes.
ours do. But it's nice to have the summer reads to
you
still
can
be able to
accomplish.
read, and it doesn't feel like too much.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
need to dip my toes into the fantasy world. I just never I never have, and I have ACOTAR on my Kindle, and I have The Fourth Wing on my Kindle. So like So I'll get into those at some point too.
Yeah.
I tried to dip into the Thorn of Rosa.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
A Court of Thorn
I
and
couldn't
Roses.
get through
Yeah.
them. I'm not a fantasy.
I'm not either.
Can't do it.
People love it so much.
So much.
So much.
I
got the
have to
whole
see what the fuck
set,
is
and I
about.
ended up giving it to somebody who works for me. I was like, no, I can't do it.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about this whole spice movement though. Like, I don't know what happened to me, but I think I got a little prudy in my old age. But I'll be reading this book and then it's like 17 pages of sex, like really explicit sex. I'm like, oh my God. And then you're like, okay, well, that's over. It's phew. And then like 8 chapters later, there's like 32 more pages of really hot sex. And I found myself like skipping through like an old lady. I don't know. It's not like I haven't read my fair share of sex.
I asked
in my life.
Catherine about it, a girl who works for us who just graduated from college. I'm like, is this a new thing where it's like sweet story, X-rated? She's like, oh yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, it's the thing. It's like the Colleen. I don't know if it's Colleen Hoover who started it. I'm not sure, but I read all her books, and now I'm like,
I
oh
think
my
it
God.
might have to do with like that Twilight
The
into
fan
like
fiction.
what is it?
Yeah,
50 Shades of
maybe.
Grey. Like there's just
Yeah.
something where this next generation, like they get way more of it than we do. Where it was like, oh my God, they're gonna like the Pinky. Like I know exactly what you're talking about with the Pinky scene. I know what scene that is, and I was like, that used to be what we used to like thrive on. Now it's like, no, you need like a full on hookup, and it's. I'm like, I sit there with my daughter who's 13. I'm like, is this appropriate? Like.
Well, I read Harlequin. I read Harlequin growing up, right? Like, sort of recreationally. And I like the amount of adjectives people can come up with to describe a man's penis and a woman's like vagina is hilarious. And I used to make fun of it. And now we're back there. But now it's just like they just skip the sort of flowery version of it and go straight to like the explicit definition.
Right.
Anyway, that's been a fun exploration too. But I'm now weirdly somehow a prude. I don't know how it happened.
Well, Julie, it was so nice meeting you. This was a great conversation. Oh my gosh, so much fun.
Oh, thank you so much. This was wonderful. And I'll come back anytime.
Great. We will have you back.
Thank you for listening to In Her Words. We hope you'll join us at womenandentertainment.com and go to our Substack for extended interviews and behind-the-scenes access.